My name is Elijah, 27 years old. I live alone in a small apartment on the north side of Chicago. I'm a freelance editor, which means I spend most of my time at home. I like the quiet, the stillness. I like hearing nothing but my own thoughts. That's why I moved here, 13th floor, Unit 13B, a small, quiet place where I could work undisturbed. I never gave much thought to the number. I've never been superstitious. But maybe I should have been. The first day was normal. I moved in, set up my desk, stacked some books on the shelves, played a bit of music. The apartment was old, sure, but sturdy. The walls were thick, the hallway clean, the elevator slow but working. That night, as I lay in bed for the first time, staring at the ceiling fan humming overhead, I heard something odd. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even distinct at first. But it was there, breathing. Soft, slow breathing. Like someone lying on the other side of my bedroom wall, calm and steady. At first I thought it must be the pipes, or maybe I was just overtired. But something about it felt too human. I knocked on the wall. No response. I leaned closer and listened. Nothing. But just as I crawled back into bed and turned off the light, I heard 3 slow knocks coming from inside the wall. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I brought it up casually to the property manager. I asked who lived in 13A, the unit next to mine. He looked up from his desk and shrugged. 13A? It's been empty for a couple years now. No one's in there. I asked if he was sure, and he nodded. Yep, guy who used to live there just disappeared one day. Never came back. We tried to rent it out, but people keep canceling. That night, I decided to record the sounds. I opened a voice recorder on my phone, left it running on the nightstand beside the wall, and tried to sleep. The next morning, I listened while making coffee. The first hour or two, nothing. A creak here and there. And then at exactly 3:12 a.m. the sounds changed. First, a slow creaking, like the hinges of a closet door opening. Then a faint sliding sound, like something dragging across the floor. And then clear as day, a voice whispering, right into the mic, "You look handsome when you sleep." I dropped my coffee. My skin went cold. The voice didn't sound right. It wasn't a normal whisper. It sounded wrong, like someone mimicking speech, like a machine trying to sound human, and failing. I called my friend Sarah and crashed at her place that night. I showed her the recording, and she just stared at me and said, "You need to get out of that place." Right now, I wanted to believe it was all in my head, that maybe I'd been pranked or the audio was corrupted. But something inside me knew I wasn't alone in that apartment. The next day, I went back during daylight to grab my laptop and clothes. I planned to leave for good. But when I arrived, my front door was slightly open. I froze. I always lock my door, always. I slowly stepped inside. Everything looked normal at first, but the air felt off, thick, heavy. And then I caught the smell, rot. It hit me like a wall, like spoiled meat or something worse. I walked toward my bedroom and saw that the closet door was ajar. My pulse spiked. I stepped closer, heart pounding, and in the dim light, I saw something move. Something was behind my clothes. I leaned in, and in the dark I saw eyes, wide, unblinking eyes staring right at me. They didn't flinch, didn't look away, just watched. From inside the damn closet, then in the same warped whisper I'd heard on the audio, "You're home early." Elijah. I ran. I didn't even grab my keys. I bolted straight to the police station and reported a break-in. At first they looked skeptical, but they agreed to send 2 officers to check the apartment. What they found made the news. Behind the closet, the police discovered a false wall. A panel had been carefully removed and reattached, hiding a crawl space. The space led to a narrow tunnel between Unit 13A and 13B, just wide enough for one person to crawl through. At the end of the tunnel was a small makeshift room, a nest, blankets, rotted food, water bottles, trash, but the worst part? There were photos. Dozens of them. Photos of me, sleeping, eating, working. Some taken from behind the air vent, some from cracks in the wall, a few taken from beneath my bed. They arrested the man an hour later. His name was Richard Arlo, the same man who had once lived in 13A, the one everyone thought had vanished years ago. But he hadn't left. He had moved into the walls. He'd been living there silently for months, watching me every day, every night. When the police questioned him, he didn't deny a thing. He sat calmly and said, "I liked him. He was quiet. He let me be close." They asked him how long he'd been there. He said, "Since before Elijah moved in. I was just waiting for someone quiet to come back." They asked him why he did it. He smiled. "I'm not the only one in the walls. They're full of eyes. I just became one of them. I was numb. I didn't sleep for days. I moved out immediately. I changed my phone, cut my hair, started over in another state. But even now, months later, I can't sleep without the lights on. I can't stay in a room without checking every closet, every vent. Because there was one final thing the police showed me. A recording. My phone had kept recording after I ran out that night. And in the final few minutes, after everything went quiet, there was one last whisper. So close to the mic it made the speaker buzz. "If you leave, I'll follow." I now live in a third-floor unit in a modern building with concrete walls. No crawl spaces. No hidden panels. But sometimes at night, still hear things. Breathing, scratching. Maybe it's paranoia. Maybe it's just trauma, or maybe it's not over. Because every so often, I get a photo sent to my new phone. A picture of me, sleeping, and it's taken from inside the room. My name is Dr. Elaine Marsden. I'm 42, a former clinical psychiatrist. After 20 years of dealing with the sickest minds in the Ashmore Institute, I walked away. Burned out, haunted, numb. I thought leaving would give me peace. That I'd finally be free of the voices and confessions, of people who whispered horrors as if they were casual memories. But it turns out, monsters don't stay locked in hospitals. Sometimes they follow you home. I moved into apartment 7A of the Ellsworth building about 6 months ago. It's nothing fancy. Old brick walls, heavy doors, flickering hallway lights. But it's quiet. Or at least it was. The building has a strange layout. No floor 8, no floor 13. Superstition, I guess. My unit is beneath where 13B should be, if the floor existed. But according to the blueprints, there's nothing above me. Just concrete. At first, I loved the stillness. I spent my days reading, journaling, baking banana bread, trying to piece myself back together. Then the packages started arriving. The first one came in a plain brown box. No return address. Inside, a child's stuffed rabbit, one eye missing, the fur matted with old stains. No note. I thought it was a mistake. I left it at the lobby. The second package came 3 days later. It was heavier. I opened it slowly and found an old leather-bound notebook, pages yellowed. The first page read, "Property of RA." I flipped through. Page after page of scrawled drawings, eyes, dozens, hundreds on ceilings, in walls, under beds, and at the very end, a drawing of a floor plan. It was labeled, Ellsworth Building, unauthorized level 13. My hands went cold, RA. I knew those initials, Richard Arlo, my patient, my failure. He'd been admitted to Ashmore 9 years ago. Paranoid delusions, severe sensory hallucinations. He claimed there were others living inside his walls, watching him. He said they whispered to him, taught him how to disappear. He used to draw constantly, spirals, symbols, diagrams. I remember once asking him, "Where are these places?" And he replied, "Not where, between." He escaped 3 years ago, disappeared without a trace. I tried not to think about it, but now, his drawings were here, at my door. That night I didn't sleep. I left all the lights on. At 3:00 a.m. I heard the first sound. Tap, 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 soft, faint, not from the hallway, from underneath the floor. I froze. The sound was rhythmic, like knuckles tapping in a pattern. I pressed my ear to the hardwood. Silence. Then a whisper, muffled, male. "Elaine." I jerked back. My heart slammed in my chest. I searched the room, checked under furniture, turned up the volume on every white noise machine I had, but the sound didn't return. The next morning, I requested the building's maintenance supervisor, a short, quiet man named Reuben. I asked if there was anything under my unit. Pipes, ductwork, crawl spaces. He hesitated. Well, technically there's no floor above you, but... He trailed off. Back in the 70s, this place was part of a research grant. Military contractor, I think. Some weird soundproofing architecture. Nobody talks about it much. I pressed him. Finally, he confessed there were rumors. A secret maintenance level between floors, not accessible by the elevator, only reachable through the east stairwell, via a locked fire door. That night I went looking. I brought a flashlight and Richard's notebook. I followed the stairwell all the way up. Floor 11, 12, then nothing, just a blank space. And yet, there was a narrow landing, dust-covered, with a strange indentation in the wall, like a door frame that had been sealed over. I pressed my hand against it, hollow. As I turned to leave, I felt a rush of cold air from the vent nearby, and from inside it, a voice. He never left. I stumbled backward and ran. Back in my apartment, I paced for hours. The next package arrived the following morning. No label. Inside, a photograph. Black and white. Blurry. It showed a room. Concrete walls. No windows. A chair bolted to the floor. In the corner, a figure crouched. Gaunt, hair stringy, barely human. On the back, scribbled in pencil, "I can see you from below. Your smile has changed." I called the police. They said the packages were probably from a patient, that I should report it to my old employer. But Ashmore Institute shut down last year. Budget cuts, scandals, staff disappearances. The files were sealed. The building was condemned. No forwarding contacts. I felt like I was being slowly, intentionally unraveled. Each night the tapping returned. Always around 3 a.m. Always followed by whispers. The voice began reciting things from my past. Therapy session transcripts, old secrets I'd buried, even the lullaby my mother used to hum. And then one night it stopped whispering and started laughing. The laugh wasn't loud. It was inside my head like an echo bouncing around my skull. I started recording the sounds. I tried sleeping with headphones. Nothing helped. 3 days later, I lost power. Total blackout. I lit candles and huddled in the living room, hugging myself. And then I heard it again. Not below this time. Behind the wall. My bedroom wall. Slow scraping like fingernails on drywall. And then a voice, soft, male, familiar. "Elaine, come down." I don't remember grabbing the crowbar. I don't remember how many times I struck the drywall. But eventually the plaster crumbled. There was space behind it. A vent. I crawled in. The tunnel was tight, stifling. Dust choked my lungs. I kept crawling. The vent split into 2 paths, one up, one down. I followed the downward slope. Eventually, I reached an opening. I slid out into darkness. The flashlight flickered, concrete walls, metal floor. And at the center of the room, the same chair from the photo. I wasn't alone. From the far side of the room, I heard a slow breath. Then footsteps. I turned the flashlight, and there he was. Richard Arlo. Gaunt, pale, filthy. His eyes wide and unblinking. And around him, the walls pulsed. Like they were breathing, watching. "I missed your voice," he whispered. "They like your voice." I turned to run, but the vent behind me was gone, sealed. The room began to vibrate. The air turned electric. I screamed. Then darkness. I woke up in my apartment, gasping, power restored, lights on, everything normal. Had I dreamt it all? No, because on my desk sat the notebook. Only now, every page was filled, in my own handwriting, drawings, notes, maps, symbols, obsessive, deranged. And on the last page, one sentence. "I'm watching them now. I don't leave the apartment anymore. I've sealed the vents, I've nailed shut the closet. But sometimes I sit very still and listen. Because I can hear the neighbors again, scraping, breathing, tapping, even though I know there are no tenants above me. There never were. Knew something was seriously wrong when I woke up at exactly 2:13 a.m. to the smell of cigarette smoke, and I live alone. The scent was stale, earthy, like someone had been chain-smoking in my living room for hours. But worse than that was the soft creaking of wood, slow, deliberate steps right above my bed. My unit was on the top floor. There shouldn't be anything above me. I lay there, frozen, staring at the ceiling as it groaned again. This wasn't just the building settling. It was the sound of pacing, back and forth. Then it stopped, and I swear I heard a low breath, exhaled directly into my ear. I screamed, turned on the light, and swept the room with a kitchen knife. Nothing. Doors locked, windows sealed. But when I looked in the bathroom mirror, written in condensation on the glass were the words, "You know him." By morning, I convinced myself it was stress. I hadn't been sleeping. The packages hadn't stopped. On Thursday, I got a box containing a stack of old water-damaged journals. No return address. The name inside the cover was Richard Arlo. That name again. It wouldn't let me go. I brought the journals to work to see if any of the handwriting matched Arlo's psychiatric files from years ago. I told myself it was just to satisfy curiosity, but in my gut, I knew it was more. Something in me needed to understand what had happened to him. The journals were terrifying. The early entries were typical. Strange dreams, a fear of being watched, anxiety about his parents' behavior. But as they went on, they devolved into something else entirely. Paranoid rants, diagrams of hallways and vents, and drawings, hundreds of them. Dark, smudged sketches of a figure without eyes, always in the corner, always watching. Under one of the drawings, he wrote, "It lives in the walls. It listens through the pipes. If you speak its name, it becomes you." The final journal was dated just 3 months before the apartment fire that supposedly took Arlo's life. The last line he ever wrote, "I'm not the only one it followed home. That night I tried to sleep with the lights on, clutching my phone, the knife still tucked under my pillow. Around 1:30 a.m. I woke to a rattling noise. The sound was coming from the heat vent. It was faint, like something crawling through the ductwork. Then I heard it whisper my name. I bolted upright, hard in my throat, and pointed my phone's flashlight toward the vent. Nothing, but the voice had sounded wet, close, and somehow familiar. I got on my knees and unscrewed the vent plate. Inside, stuffed in the corner behind a thick layer of dust and mouse droppings, was a tiny cassette tape. Who uses cassettes anymore? I didn't have a tape player, so I borrowed one from the archives at my university. The librarian looked at me like I was crazy. I didn't care. When I played the tape in my office that afternoon, it was nearly silent at first. Then came the static, and beneath it, a voice. "This is Richard. This is my last recording. If you're hearing this, it's already watching you. Don't listen too long. Don't..." The tape cut to high-pitched squeals like metal scraping on metal, and something like breathing. The final 10 seconds were incomprehensible except for a single phrase, repeated over and over. "Down, down, down, through the vent behind the wall. 7A is not safe." I almost threw up. I rushed home determined to leave. I packed my things. I called a friend to crash at their place. But as I went to grab my coat, I noticed something new in the hallway wall, just beside the bathroom. A faint rectangular seam, like a sealed hatch. I pressed on it, and it gave slightly. Panic and curiosity wrestled inside me. I should have left. I knew that, but my hand kept pushing. The panel popped open, revealing a narrow crawl space lined with old insulation and crumbling brick. It smelled of rot and something metallic. Blood? I slid inside with my phone light. The space was barely wide enough to crawl through. 10 feet in, I saw something that froze me cold. A rusted ladder, bolted vertically into the brick, leading down into blackness. Beneath apartment 7A, a tunnel. I told myself no. I told myself this was insane, but I couldn't turn back. Something was pulling me forward. A hum in the air, a vibration in my teeth. My mind felt invaded, like someone else's thoughts were being downloaded into mine. I climbed down. The shaft was deeper than it should have been, more than 2 stories. I emerged into a low concrete hallway, pitch black except for my phone. Graffiti covered the walls in languages I didn't recognize. Pipes lined the ceiling like skeletal arms. The air buzzed with static. And the hum was louder here, almost musical, like a chorus humming from deep in the earth. Then I saw it. A door, rusted, unmarked, but scrawled in black marker across the frame, 13B was never locked. I opened the door. Inside was a small windowless room. Burned furniture. A mattress scorched to springs. And on the far wall, a mirror. Cracked, but not broken. And as I stepped forward, I saw a figure in the reflection that wasn't me. It had no eyes, no mouth, just dark pulsing skin and long fingers that ended in nails like broken glass. It raised one hand and pointed behind me. I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, the mirror was just a mirror again. But a phrase was now scratched into the glass. If you tell them, they'll come for you too. I stumbled out, heart pounding, ears ringing. I climbed back up, slammed the hatch shut, and covered it with furniture. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, my apartment has grown colder. I haven't slept. Every time I blink, I see the figure in the mirror. My reflection stutters, sometimes blinking out before returning. I tried to call someone, the police, my friends. No one answers, and this morning I checked my voicemail. There was only one message. It was my voice whispering. I'm not the only one it followed home. I sat in the police station for hours, trembling and trying to explain everything. The packages, the voices, the red journal. But I could tell from the way the officers looked at me, confused, skeptical, that they didn't believe me. They said the unit was empty when they entered. No sign of a man, no blood, no journal, nothing. They said I had probably fallen and hit my head, that I was overworked, stressed, maybe even suffering from lingering guilt related to a past patient. But I knew what I saw, what I heard, what followed me. I saw the crawl space, I read the journal. I heard Richard's voice, and worse, I felt the thing that stood behind him. The moment I looked into that mirror and saw more than just my reflection, I knew. I never returned to Unit 7A. My resignation was immediate. I moved across the country, changed my name. For years, I tried to forget. But last week I received another package. No return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo of my old apartment door, 7A, and a sticky note with one sentence. Do you hear it too? That same night, the floor beneath my bed creaked, then whispered, and this time it said my name. I used to think nightmares were something that ended when you woke up. But after what happened on Elm Street, specifically beneath House No. 59, I know better. I've worked as a property inspector for nearly 8 years. My job isn't glamorous, but it pays the bills. Most of the time I deal with leaky roofs, old wiring, or mold infestations. Nothing that would warrant more than a quick report. But this house was different. It started with a call from the landlord. The tenant, a single father named Jerome Watkins, had vanished. No warning, no note, nothing. His rent had been late twice before, so at first, the landlord thought he'd just skipped town. But when he came by to change the locks, he found the man's wallet, phone, and even dinner still sitting on the kitchen table. The house felt abandoned, yet occupied, like someone had left in the middle of life. The landlord hired me to do a full inspection. I wasn't just there for the usual routine. He wanted me to check every inch: attic, basement, walls, crawl space. He was planning to list the property, but needed assurance there was nothing wrong. When I arrived, the place looked unremarkable. Old Victorian, 2 stories, peeling paint, cracked window frames. The kind of place that holds its secrets like stale air in the walls. Inside, it was tidy. Eerily so. Every room was clean, every object in its place. but something felt heavy, like the air was thicker in certain rooms. I checked the upstairs bedrooms first. Nothing unusual. The bathroom had a mirror that seemed newer than the rest of the house, like someone had replaced it recently. It still had toothpaste flecks on it. I made a note to mention that. Then I headed to the basement. It was colder down there naturally, but the cold wasn't just physical, it was unsettling, almost pressing. That's where I noticed it. A small wooden door built into the far wall, behind the old boiler. I crouched down, brushed aside a few cobwebs and opened it. A crawl space, maybe 4 feet high, 10 feet deep. The air inside smelled wrong. Not rot, exactly, but chemical, metallic, and something else, something old and wet. I shined my flashlight inside. The walls had scratch marks, not like from rats or animals. These were deeper, wider. Fingernail marks, it looked like. And the dirt floor had drag lines. That's when I saw the first thing that made me freeze. A child's shoe. Tiny, pink, half buried in the soil. I'm not proud to say I didn't go in immediately. Something about that crawl space made my skin crawl. But I had a job to do. I crawled in slowly, one knee at a time. The flashlight flickered as I moved, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and move just a second too long. Near the back wall, I found a small wooden box. When I opened it, I found old photographs, black and white, curled at the edges. They were all of children, maybe 5 or 6 years old. All of them had their eyes scratched out, not digitally, with something sharp. Some had red stains on the corners. In one photo, a man stood behind a little boy, smiling, hand on his shoulder. The boy looked terrified. The man's face was blurred like motion blur, but too consistent to be natural. I took one photo and slipped it into my jacket. I don't know why. I think I needed proof. Something to remind myself this wasn't a hallucination. Just as I turned to crawl back out, I heard something behind me. A rustling, soft, like someone shifting in loose soil. I spun around, flashlight shaking. No one was there, but the crawl space felt smaller, like the walls had shifted. The light caught something in the far corner. A face, no, not a face, a mask. It was white, featureless, with eye holes that were too wide and too low. It vanished as quickly as I saw it. I scrambled out, heart racing. Back in the basement, I slammed the crawl space door shut and tried to calm myself. I decided I'd seen enough. As I walked back upstairs, the house seemed quieter than before, like it was listening. That night back at home, I took out the photograph. Something was off. The boy's expression had changed. He looked more distressed, like he was mid-scream. The man's hand was gone, but a dark shape hovered above the boy's head, like a shadow that didn't belong in the frame. I locked the photo in my desk and tried to forget about it. A week later, I got a call from a local detective. He asked me to come in. When I arrived, he laid out several photos across his desk. Children, all missing. One of them was the boy from the photograph I found. "Where did you see this?" the detective asked. I told him. "Elm Street. The crawl space." He stared at me for a long time, then said quietly, "We never told the public about the crawl space. Only the families knew. That night, someone broke into my apartment. They didn't take anything, at least nothing obvious. But my desk drawer was open. The photo was gone. In its place was a different one. A photo of me, crouched in the crawl space, taken from inside. Since then, I've moved twice. Changed jobs. But I never sleep through the night. Not anymore. Every now and then, I hear scraping beneath my bed, like fingernails clawing at the underside. And once I woke to find a photo on my pillow. It was me sleeping, and behind me, barely visible in the shadows, was that same white mask, watching. I never thought buying a cheap fixer-upper would ruin my life, but it wasn't the mold or the leaky pipes, or even the neighborhood drunks that destroyed me. It was what I found in the walls. My name's Marcus, and I used to live in a small town just outside Ashmore. You probably haven't heard of it. It's one of those forgotten towns surrounded by woods and empty fields, where the houses creak louder than the people talk. I moved there for a fresh start. After the divorce and my father's death, I needed quiet. I needed to be alone. The house was dirt cheap. 3 bedrooms, an attic, and a basement for under $40K. I should have known something was off when the realtor practically begged me to buy it. Said it had been vacant since the previous owner vanished during renovations. I thought it was just a weird small-town rumor. It wasn't. The first week went fine. I tore up the old carpeting, painted the living room, replaced the rotten porch boards. But every night, without fail, I'd hear faint scratching from inside the walls. At first, I thought it was just squirrels or mice. Old houses come with unwanted guests. But then the scratching started coming from behind my headboard, then from the hallway, then from inside the closet. I tried traps, poison, even called an exterminator. Nothing helped. One night around 2:30 a.m., I finally got fed up and started hammering a hole in the drywall of my bedroom, right where the noise was loudest. What I found stopped me cold. Behind the wall, in the narrow crawl space between studs, I found dozens, maybe hundreds of Polaroid photos taped to the wooden beams, all of them of me. Sleeping, eating, showering, reading. Every angle you can imagine. I stumbled back, shaking. Some of the photos were dated. The earliest was from the day I moved in. The latest? Yesterday. I called the cops immediately. They searched the walls, the crawl spaces, even the attic, but they didn't find a single photo. Not one. They said I must have imagined it. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe I was projecting my isolation. But I know what I saw. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept the lights on, every door open. Around 3:12 a.m. I heard the scratching again, but this time it was followed by a voice, whispering, laughing, then breathing. I got out of bed, holding a flashlight and a crowbar. I walked toward the hallway and saw a flicker of movement at the end, something ducking into the wall panel beside the bathroom. I tore the panel off. What I saw inside haunts me every second I close my eyes. It was a tunnel, narrow, damp, and clearly used. Scratches covered the wood. There were piles of old clothes, dirty blankets, crushed juice boxes, and on the far end of the crawl space was a small, contorted figure. A girl, pale, wiry, and smeared in filth. She didn't move when the flashlight hit her. She just smiled, wide, too wide. Then she spoke. "You're the loudest one yet," she whispered, "but I like your voice." I screamed, stumbled back, dropped the flashlight. By the time I got it again, she was gone. The next morning I left. I drove 8 hours to my sister's house in the city and never looked back. I hired people to go back, retrieve my things, sell the place, tear it down, whatever. Weeks passed. I started sleeping again. Then a package arrived, no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo of me, sleeping, taken last night, and scribbled on the back in what looked like ash or dried blood. "You left the walls open." My final decision to leave was spurred by a final sleepless night. Around 3:17 a.m. I heard a knock, not on my front door, but from inside the wall near the fireplace. Then a voice, garbled, as if underwater. "You took what wasn't yours, a returner." I ran out barefoot into the snow, not caring about the cold or the blood that started to trail from my feet. I drove. I didn't stop until I reached the next town. I never returned to that house, never even looked back. But I still have that necklace, the one I found behind the plaster, the one that belonged to the girl no one wanted to talk about. I tried to throw it away. I buried it once, but it always finds its way back. Last week it was in my sock drawer, and 2 nights ago I woke up to a knock at the closet door, and a whisper that didn't belong in this world. I never wanted to return to Ashmore. After all the stories, after all the warnings, it should have been enough. But in February of last year, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a map, hand-drawn. It marked 4 locations. Across town, an old apartment complex, a duplex on a hill, a house across from Elm Street, and a forgotten stone house in the woods, each marked with an X, along with the map, a Polaroid photo, faded and discolored, but I recognized the woman instantly. Her name was Claudia Morse, my sister. Missing since 2011, presumed dead. I never gave up looking for her. But after a decade, I learned to live with silence. Until that envelope. The odd thing? Claudia had no known connection to Ashmore. She'd lived 2 states away. Never visited. Or so I thought. I took a week off work and drove in. Ashmore was colder than I remembered. Grayer somehow. The kind of place where you start to wonder if you're dreaming, or if the world simply forgot to color itself in. I followed the map, starting with the first marked location, apartment 13B. The building had been condemned years ago, but I bribed a city worker for the keys. Inside, the smell of mold and something older clung to the walls. The unit itself was small, stale, and silent, but etched into the underside of the kitchen counter, I found a name, Claudia Morse. My sister had been here. At some point, in the bedroom closet, I found a piece of paper taped to the wall. Faded, stained, but legible. It simply read, "He watches from below. Don't look at the mirror after midnight." I moved on to the second mark, Unit 7A. The duplex was still occupied, but the tenant was out of town. I spoke to the neighbor, an old woman. She said the last 3 people who lived in 7A left within months. "Voices in the walls," she whispered. "The kind that call you by name." I snuck inside with a lockpick. The moment I stepped into the unit, my phone battery died. Everything felt heavier, like gravity wanted me closer to the floor. I found a journal in the living room, pages ripped out. The remaining ones scrawled with incoherent phrases, but 3 words kept repeating, "She's not alone." I moved to the third mark, the house on Elm Street. A cold, empty structure, bare walls, broken fireplace. But in the crawl space beneath wooden boards, I found a necklace. It was the one my sister wore the day she vanished. There was no mistaking it. I held it and cried. The silence around me felt cruel, violent. That night, I camped in my car just outside the 4th and final mark, a forgotten stone house in the woods, off Quarry Lane. Locals call it the Husk. No one lives there. Never has. But lights have been reported. Screams, too. I went in at dawn. The house groaned as I walked, as if it recognized my weight. In the basement, I found something I can barely describe. Symbols etched into the floor in a language I don't understand. In the center, a pile of bones. Human, some small, some too long. Around them, burned remnants of photographs. One still had half a face. My sister's. Then a sound behind me, a voice. "You weren't supposed to come." I turned around. A man stood there, pale, clean-shaven, wearing a gray suit but barefoot. His eyes were black, not dark but truly absent of light. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. "You can leave," he said, "but you'll never really leave." He didn't stop me. I ran. I didn't grab anything. I just ran until I collapsed outside in the snow. A week later, I was back home. I tried to report what I saw. The police laughed. There was no evidence. The bones were gone. The map disappeared. And the Polaroid? Blank, just a white square. But I know what I saw. I know Claudia was there, and I'm not the only one. Because all 4 places, the ones from the map, each had a tenant who disappeared without explanation. One in 2006. One in 2009, another in 2014, and my sister in 2011. Each one lived in one of those places. Each one vanished after reporting strange events. It's like the town fed on them, like it still does. And now, things are happening in my home too. Lights flicker at 3:13 a.m. The mirror in my hallway shows a reflection that moves a second too late. Last night I found ash on my kitchen floor. No source, no fire, just a small pile, the same as in that basement. I've started locking every door, every window, but I still hear the knock from inside the wall. And I know I brought something back from Ashmore. I think it was waiting and now it's here.